I saw a customer fire my coworker and then watch her collapse, bleeding on the floor, all because she didn't know who she was truly speaking to. The fluorescent lights of luxury luxe always gave me a headache. They hummed with a sterile, cold energy that perfectly matched the vibe of the clientele. Or more accurately, the clientele this particular branch expected. I was working the closing shift, counting down the minutes until I could peel off this ridiculously tailored vest and just breathe. My name is Mark, and I've been working retail management long enough to know when a customer is about to be a problem. It was about 20 minutes before closing on a Tuesday. Usually Tuesdays are dead, the retail equivalent of watching paint dry. But tonight, the store was hosting a small and exclusive preview event for a new line of Italian leather goods. Very high-end, very quiet, very intimidating. The kind of place where people whisper about thread counts. That's when he walked in. He was tall, impeccably dressed, but not in the typical flashy way. His suit was charcoal, perfectly tailored, the kind of quiet luxury that screams old money or serious, serious success. He carried a simple, unbranded leather briefcase, and his expression was neutral, almost bored. He wasn't looking at the display cases. He was looking at the prices. And then there was Brenda. Brenda has been working at Luxury Luxe for 15 years. She's a veteran, which in retail terms translates to she's deeply entrenched in the store's unspoken caste system. Brenda believes Luxury Luxe is her kingdom. I see, and she guards the velvet ropes with a zealotry usually reserved for religious artifacts. She clocks faces, shoes, and, let's be honest, skin tones with ruthless efficiency. Brenda was helping a woman whose entire net worth probably rested on her single emerald earring. As the impeccably dressed man walked past, his hand brushing lightly against a display pedestal, Brenda stopped mid-sentence. She gave him a slow, sweeping once-over, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows climbing towards her hairline. "Can I help you, sir?" Brenda's voice was sharp, dripping with forced politeness that managed to sound like an accusation. The man paused, turning slowly. His eyes, the color of dark roasted coffee, finally focused on Brenda. "Perhaps," he said, his voice deep, smooth, almost resonant. "Hey, I'm looking for your pricing structure on the crocodile skin attaché cases." Brenda actually snorted. It was small, barely audible, but I heard it from across the floor. I started walking towards them, ready to step in as the calm mediator, the professional manager trying to smooth over the inevitable clash of egos. "Sir," Brenda continued, leaning in conspiratorially, as if the very concept of this man affording anything in the store was a shared secret between her and the emerald earring lady. "These pieces start at $60,000. I assume you're perhaps looking for something similar, maybe a nice nylon travel bag in the accessories section. We have some lovely woven totes on sale in the back." The air instantly solidified. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The emerald earring woman stopped looking at her ring and started staring at the man, a flicker of uncomfortable curiosity in her eyes. Adesai reached them just as the man turned his full attention back to Brenda. His face hadn't changed its expression, but something beneath the surface had shifted. It was like watching ice turn into granite. "Woven totes," he repeated, the words flat. "Are you suggesting, madam, that based on my appearance I cannot afford an item in this establishment that starts at $60,000? Brenda, fueled by years of unspoken prejudice and the heady rush of feeling superior, went for the kill shot. "Sir, this is a high-end boutique. We cater to a specific clientele. Perhaps if you looked around first you'd realize that the aesthetic here is exclusive. We wouldn't want you to waste your time or ours." It was blatant, insulting, and utterly unprofessional. My training kicked in, overriding my immediate rage. "Brenda!" "Hey, that's enough," I interjected, my voice firm but low. "Sir, my apologies. I'm Mark, the store manager. Please disregard Brenda's unusual customer service approach. Let me personally walk you through our premier collection." I tried to guide him away, but the man didn't move. He stayed rooted to the spot, his gaze locked on Brenda, who was now defensively gripping the edge of a nearby display counter, her face flushed crimson, perhaps realizing she'd overplayed her hand with the actual manager present. "No, Mark," the customer said, his voice calm, carrying effortlessly over the hushed gallery of the boutique. I think I'll stay right here. I'd like to understand the store policy regarding discrimination in service. Do you have a corporate handbook I could review? Sir, that's not necessary, I started. He cut me off with a slight raising of his hand. He looked directly at Brenda, a slow, almost predatory smile finally touching his lips. You see, Brenda, I heard the manager use your name. You've made a crucial error in judgment. You assumed my entire financial standing based on the color of my skin and the quality of my wallet choice for this particular evening. He reached down, opened his unbranded briefcase with a soft click, and pulled out a slim, matte black electronic tablet. He tapped the screen once. Let me clarify my purchasing power for you, he continued, his voice gaining an almost mocking theatricality. I own a substantial stake in the holding company that franchises this entire retail chain, Luxury Lux. I also happen to be the primary investor in the property you are currently standing on, as this building is part of a complex I developed last year. Brenda's jaw went slack. The emerald earring lady let out a small, strangled gasp. The man ignored them both, focusing only on the tablet screen. He zoomed in on something, then turned the screen slightly so I could catch a glimpse. It was an internal accounting dashboard, a dizzying spreadsheet filled with figures that made my eyes water. Now, he said, his voice dropping back to that devastatingly smooth register. I'm having a bit of a reaction to the ambience tonight. It seems this particular location is suffering from a severe case of outdated management and staff toxicity. I find this atmosphere unprofessional. He looked up at Brenda, whose face had turned a ghastly ashy white. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, staring straight through him as if seeing a ghost. So, here's what's going to happen, the man stated, sounding less like a customer and more like an executioner reading a final decree. I am going to purchase everything currently in this store, every display piece, every item in the back stock, every pending order, and I will have it all liquidated and donated to the local community center by dawn. And Brenda, he took a breath, and the silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the distant, irritating hum of the fluorescent lights. Brenda, you're fired. Effective immediately. Mark, you will process her termination paperwork tonight, and then I need you to arrange for the immediate transfer of all store keys and access codes to my interim acquisition team. He set the tablet down gently on the counter, the gesture infinitely more menacing than a slam. And before I leave, he added, turning back to Brenda, who hadn't moved a muscle, hadn't even seemed to breathe since he announced his ownership. I want to see you apologize. A genuine, heartfelt apology for your prejudice, or I will ensure that every piece of outstanding debt you currently hold is called in simultaneously by morning. Brenda's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her hands, gripping the counter, started shaking violently. She tried to speak, her eyes wide with terror, looking from the man to me, then back to the man, as if seeking an escape route that didn't exist. Then, with a shuddering, rattling exhale that sounded like air escaping a punctured tire, Brenda's eyes rolled up in her head and she collapsed onto the polished marble floor in a dead heap. She didn't just faint, she dropped. And as I rushed forward, pushing past the customer, who merely watched with detached interest, I looked down at Brenda's still form, and saw a thin, bright trickle of blood begin to snake out from beneath her ear, staining the pristine white marble a sickening, sudden red. The sight of the blood snapped me out of my stunned paralysis. Years of emergency retail training, which mostly involved dealing with drunks, shoplifters, and allergic reactions to cheap perfume, kicked in. I dropped to my knees beside Brenda, ignoring the chilling, aristocratic presence of the store owner looming over us. "Call 911, now!" I barked at the nearest sales assistant, a young woman named Chloe, who was frozen mid-gasp near the jewelry display. "Chloe, call 911. Tell them we have an unconscious person, possible head trauma." I gently tilted Brenda's head to the side, checking her airway. She was breathing, shallow and fast, but breathing. The blood wasn't gushing, thankfully, just a slow, thick seep from where her temple had connected sharply with the floor. The customer, my new terrifying overlord, stepped over my outstretched arm with the casual grace of someone navigating a puddle. He didn't offer help. He didn't look concerned. He looked clinical. "Mark," he said, his voice cutting through the rising panic in the store. "Stay with her. I'm not leaving until the transfer of assets is secured. I've already alerted my legal team to handle the necessary termination paperwork remotely. You, however, have a more immediate task. I looked up at him, frustration and adrenaline warring inside me. Sir, this is a medical emergency. I need to know if you're calling an ambulance, or if I should wait for the police. He sighed, a sound of extreme intellectual boredom. Ambulances take time. I have my own resources. There is a private medical courier service on standby who specializes in high net worth individuals. They'll be here in 8 minutes. They will manage her discreetly. My concern right now is the integrity of this transaction. Do you have access to the full inventory manifest?
The security safe codes and the access logs for the past 6 months? He was unbelievable. His employee, my colleague, was bleeding out on the floor, and he was prioritizing the liquidation of designer handbags.
You're treating this like a hostile takeover, not a medical crisis, I snapped, pushing myself to stand, keeping an eye on Brenda's chest rising and falling.
Oh, it is a hostile takeover, Mark, he corrected smoothly, picking up his tablet again. This entire location has been operating at a gross inefficiency, relying on outdated hiring metrics that clearly prioritize superficial conformity over actual human decency. Brenda was a symptom of a rotten core. You, however, seem competent. You reacted immediately to the medical situation, even while under extreme duress. He walked over to the main accounting station, pulling up a secure login portal on his tablet that seemed to bypass the store's main server firewall with a single touch. The goal is simple: inventory and acquisition. I want a full count of every SKU by 2 a.m. I will wire the full acquisition sum, a significant premium over current market value, I might add, to the corporate account once you confirm the total. Mark, you are now in charge of facilitating the transfer of assets to my logistics team. Consider yourself provisionally promoted to acquisition liaison until further notice. Your bonus will reflect the difficulty of this overnight task. Provisionally promoted? While my coworker lay unconscious? The absurdity of the situation was almost dizzying, but the mention of a bonus, a significant one, given the size of the transaction he was implying, was the only thing that grounded me. I needed control, and right now he was offering it, however twisted his method. Fine, I said, swallowing hard. I need access to the back inventory scanners and the master safe keys. They are kept in the manager's private office, locked with a biometric reader. Only the store manager and the district manager have access. District manager Brenda is currently indisposed, he noted dryly. Which leaves you. Lead the way, liaison. We moved to my small glass-walled office. The man stood just behind me as I placed my palm against the scanner. The lock clicked open. Inside, the office was a sanctuary of order. Files stacked neatly, the safe tucked behind a large framed photograph of the company CEO, who, I noted with a sudden chilling realization, looked strikingly similar to the man standing beside me, only younger and with a less intense gaze. I retrieved the safe key and the handheld inventory scanner. The manifest is in here, I said, pointing to the safe. He didn't even look at the safe. He looked at the framed photo. He reached up, took the picture frame off the wall, and turned it over. On the back, in elegant cursive, was an inscription. To my son, the future of the vision. Never compromise the core values. He let out a soft, humorless chuckle. The core values. How quaint. He placed the photo down very carefully. Open it. I unlocked the heavy safe, pulled out the thick binder-bound inventory list, and handed it to him, along with the scanner. I'll start cross-referencing the physical stock against this digital manifest now, I said, trying to sound professional despite the siren wail starting faintly outside. My priority is still Brenda, but I can manage the count while waiting for the courier. He nodded, finally seeming satisfied. He looked down at the scanner in his hand and then back at me, his dark eyes gleaming under the office light. Mark, there's something you need to understand about acquisitions, he murmured, leaning against my desk, crossing one perfectly polished shoe over the other. When you buy out a chain, you're not just buying assets, you're buying secrets, and sometimes you have to clean up the loose ends that the previous structure ignored. He paused, his gaze drifting towards the open office door, through which I could see the paramedics finally arriving, surrounding Brenda's still form. I want the access logs for the last 6 months because I suspect Brenda wasn't just making prejudiced comments, he continued, his voice dropping to an almost inaudible whisper, forcing me to lean in, right into his personal space. I suspect she was masking something far more serious. You see, Brenda wasn't just an employee. She was monitoring a specific, high-value internal security leak for years. And when I bought the company, the first thing I did was pull the internal audit on her communications. She was quiet, efficient, and kept her mouth shut about the millions being siphoned out of the company, provided she kept her management position secure. My blood ran cold. Are you saying she was involved in theft? He smiled, a genuine, terrifying flash of white teeth. No, Mark. I'm saying she was the gatekeeper for the theft, and she just fainted the moment she realized the new owner wasn't her silent partner, but the man whose father she betrayed to keep her petty little kingdom. He tapped the scanner again. Now, if you could locate the high-security data drive I believe she kept hidden in the back-office safe, we can expedite her non-disclosure agreement, permanently. The word betrayed hung in the air, thick and suffocating, mingling with the metallic tang of antiseptic. The paramedics were now spraying around Brenda's unconscious body. My mind was racing, trying to process the transition from a racist encounter to a high-stakes corporate espionage drama. Brenda, the petty tyrant who policed the handbag section, a key player in a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. It seemed impossible, yet the cold logic radiating from this man, my new boss, made it terrifyingly plausible. A data drive, I repeated, my voice barely a croak. In the safe, there's nothing but the cash floats and the sensitive HR files in there. Open it again, Mark, he commanded, his tone brooking no argument. He hadn't even glanced at the commotion outside. His focus was absolute, razor sharp. I'm interested in anything that contradicts the official audit log she filed last quarter. Anything small, something easily overlooked. My hands were slick with cold sweat, but I moved automatically, retrieving the heavy key, relocking the office door, though I doubted any sound could pierce the sudden wall of silence this man commanded, and turning back to the safe. The paramedics had efficiently loaded Brenda onto a gurney and were wheeling her out, their heavy boots echoing where Brenda's sharp heels usually clicked. I opened the safe again. The cash float was untouched, thick stacks of 20s and 50s secured with rubber bands. The HR files, performance reviews, termination warnings, were exactly where they should be. I scanned the back wall of the safe compartment, running my fingers along the cold steel. Nothing bulky, nothing loose. I don't see anything, sir, I reported, frustration mounting. If he was wrong, this whole charade, the firing, the purchase, the medical emergency, was just a spectacular way to exert dominance. But if he was right, the implications for me, the only other manager present, were huge. He walked over, his shadow swallowing me whole as he leaned into the safe. He didn't touch the stacks of cash. His eyes narrowed, sweeping over the files. Then he reached behind the stack of termination papers I had already confirmed were there, and his fingers brushed against a thin, stiff backing board. He pulled it out. It wasn't paper. It was a custom-made, hardened plastic sleeve, AD disguised expertly to look like the back panel of the filing binder. Inside the sleeve was a tiny, unmarked black USB drive, the kind that looks like a cheap keychain accessory. Bingo, he breathed out, a flicker of grim satisfaction crossing his face. He took the drive, holding it between his thumb and forefinger, as if it were contaminated. This little beauty holds the keys to every offshore account linked to the previous VP of operations. Brenda wasn't just covering for him, she was his cleanup crew. She kept the evidence here, hoping that when the scheme collapsed she could use it for leverage against him, or worse, against my father's board. He looked directly at me, the gravity of the situation pressing down. Now you understand why the urgency. Well, if this drive had been discovered by the board during a routine audit before I initiated this acquisition, the ensuing scandal would have decimated stock value. Brenda's collapse was timely, but inconvenient. I need this data wiped and secured before anyone outside this room, including the paramedics who might be asking too many questions about the accident, gets wind of it. He slotted the tiny USB drive into a port on his sleek tablet. The screen immediately filled with complex encryption algorithms flashing past faster than I could read them. "Mark, I need you to be ready to answer questions for the police, should they come asking about Miss Brenda's fall. You will tell them you were busy preparing the inventory transfer I authorized, and that you briefly saw her stumble near the display case. Nothing about threats. Nothing about ownership. Nothing about discrimination. Just an unfortunate workplace accident that occurred moments after she received unexpected bad news." "Bad news?" I asked faintly. "Her entire life's work, about to be undone by the man she thought she could control," he supplied, his fingers flying across the screen. "A fatal shock to the system. Now, while I neutralize this drive, I need you to secure the perimeter. Make sure Chloe and the others remain focused on the inventory, not the commotion outside. If anyone asks for your name, you're the acquisition liaison. If anyone asks for mine, you've never seen me before. I am a ghost tonight." He was asking me to lie to the police, to participate in covering up the true cause of Brenda's collapse, and to destroy evidence of a massive corporate crime, all to secure my new, very ambiguous promotion and potential bonus. The moral line was drawn in the bloodstain on the floor, and I was standing firmly on the wrong side of it. "And if I refuse?" I heard myself ask, my voice sounding far steadier than I felt. The typing stopped. The tablet screen went dark, the encryption vanishing. He slowly looked up, and for the first time since he walked in, I saw a hint of something other than detached calculation in his eyes. It was pure, cold assessment. "If you refuse," he said, pushing himself off the desk, his height suddenly dominating the small space, "then you are no longer an employee of Luxury Lux, or any company I acquire. You become an unnecessary liability connected to a pending investigation into corporate malpractice and potential manslaughter. You will lose your job, your apartment, and every professional future you've ever dreamed of. Because I will ensure that every hiring manager in this city knows exactly what kind of character you allow to flourish under your supervision." He walked back to the open door of the office, pausing only to look back at me. "I don't ask for loyalty, Mark. I demand compliance. Choose wisely." He stepped out, leaving me alone in the silence with the blinking red and blue lights flashing through the store windows, illuminating the faint, drying crimson mark on the marble floor, and the burning question of what exactly was on that tiny, malevolent USB drive, and what price I had just paid for finding out. The silence he left behind was louder than any siren. Compliance. The word echoed with the metallic taste of fear and opportunity. I looked down at my hands, seeing not just the residual grime of retail life, but the invisible ink of a potential criminal conspiracy now splashed across them. Brenda was likely on her way to the hospital, perhaps facing charges far worse than wrongful termination. And me? I was standing at a crossroads paved with stolen luxury goods and corporate secrets. Refusal meant immediate professional annihilation, a fate arguably worse than staying silent, given how quickly I'd seen this man operate. Compliance meant a significant influx of cash and a promotion into a darkness I wasn't sure I could stomach, but one that offered unimaginable power within this retail empire. I took a deep, shaky breath, the scent of leather and disinfectant filling my lungs. I made my decision. Survival dictated I play the liaison. I walked out of the office, deliberately leaving the safe open, displaying the cash float undisturbed. I approached Chloe, who was standing near the front window, her face pale as she watched the ambulance pull away. "Chloe," I said, my voice projecting the calm authority I had struggled to maintain all night. "The gentleman in the charcoal suit. He has left. He completed his final transactions. We have an emergency inventory count due by 2 a.m. focus. Every single item must be accounted for before the acquisition team arrives." "But, Brenda, what happened?" she whispered, glancing toward the entrance. "Brenda suffered a severe reaction to a sudden, unexpected corporate announcement regarding structural changes," I explained, using the exact sterile language the man had fed me. "It was a shock. She is no longer with the company. We are here to ensure a smooth transition of assets. Focus on the manifest, Chloe. The future of this store depends on our professionalism right now." I didn't need to say more. The fear in her eyes was enough to ensure her compliance. She snatched an inventory scanner and immediately turned toward the stockroom, her previous shock channeled into frantic activity. For the next 3 hours, under the glare of the harsh ceiling lights, we worked. The customer, the owner, was nowhere in sight. He had vanished as completely as he'd promised. I meticulously cross-referenced the handwritten manifest with the warehouse ledger, confirming every briefcase, every pair of gloves, every silk scarf was accounted for. The total was staggering, far exceeding the initial price point Brenda had scoffed at. At 1:55 a.m., I finalized the summary report on my personal handheld device. It was clean, accurate, and completely silent on the events of the evening. I sent the finalized SKU count, along with the confirmation code the owner had given me earlier via an encrypted text, to the single contact number he'd provided. 2 minutes later, my phone vibrated. It wasn't a text. It was a direct wire transfer confirmation. The number on the screen made my knees weak. It was enough money to erase my student loans, buy a house, and never work in retail again. It was my severance package, my bribe, my silent partnership in crime. The second message followed immediately. It was a single line. "Welcome to the new structure, Mark. Your regional director role for the Eastern Seaboard opens in 3 weeks. Do not disappoint me again." I leaned against the counter, the scanner slipping from my numb fingers. I had traded my conscience for a corner office, all because a racist clerk pushed a powerful man too far. Just as the sun began to paint a thin, bruised line on the horizon, a team arrived. They weren't uniformed security or corporate reps. They were efficient, dressed in dark, unmarked tactical gear. They moved with practiced silence, exchanging curt nods with me. One of them handed me a large, sealed envelope. "Official paperwork regarding the asset transfer and your new employment contract," the lead operative stated flatly, his eyes scanning the store as if checking for residual threats. "Your predecessor's personal effects are being collected separately." I took the envelope, the weight of it feeling like a life sentence. The team moved toward the back offices, efficiently dismantling Brenda's workspace, wiping hard drives, removing personal items, leaving nothing but clean, empty space. I looked out onto the street. The ambulance was long gone. The police, if they had even arrived, had clearly left without incident, satisfied with the narrative of a sudden collapse. Luxury Luxe, the beacon of elitist retail, was being surgically scrubbed clean of its past. I walked to the front door, the key to this entire operation, my new life, heavy in my jacket pocket. I was officially the gatekeeper now. The last thing I saw before stepping out into the dawn air was the faint, almost invisible outline on the marble floor where Brenda had fallen. It was gone now. The cleaning crew they must have sent in behind the tactical team had done their work thoroughly. As I walked away from the silent, newly acquired store, I felt the full weight of my decision. I had won the lottery, but the ticket was stained. I had escaped the tyranny of Brenda, only to fall under the dominion of her far more dangerous and infinitely richer successor. And as I rounded the corner, heading towards my new, uncertain future, I knew one thing for certain. I would spend the rest of my career looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next order to drop, terrified of the day I might be asked to silence something more than just an inventory discrepancy.